Are you on their phone?
Good table, bad table. I want to thank everybody for taking time out to participate in this. I think it's great. It's a good turnout. It's not a great turnout, but we're going to get better at it, and we're going to get more and more people engaged. See, I'm on camera. Isn't that great? I want to welcome the folks that are recording this. Let us hope that it does not interfere with your willingness to come up with ideas and willingness to speak, because we don't want to waste our precious time together. So let's be brave, let's be honest, and let's talk about what's on our mind as we figure out collectively what we can do to reduce poverty here in the Lakes region. We agreed on a couple of things as we've been sort of framing this discussion and moving forward. We all agree there is not a downside to reducing poverty in the Lakes region. There is no downside. And we all agree that we will not be successful unless we are all working together towards the same goal. After that, things start to go in different directions, and that's a good thing. Today is an exploration of the different directions. Today is making sure voices are heard and ideas are heard on how we might go about this very difficult, very arduous process that is very, very worthwhile. So I want to thank you guys for coming out. I want to thank all you guys for coming out. Now we're going to do, seeing how we're in school, we're going to do a very schooly thing here. We're going to start over here, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and repeat. And remember your number because that's going to be the group you're in. But first, I do want to thank our facilitators who also have taken time out of their busy lives to help produce this. But first and foremost, I want to thank Mike Pearson. Where's Mike? Mike is the chair of the Financial Stability Partnership, and his leadership has been instrumental in getting us to where we are today. And I know you put a lot of work in this, Mike, a lot of thought, and appreciate it very much. So let's acknowledge Mike. So we have Emily Clement. Emily, thank you very much. She is number 1.
Emily is
number 2. Where's number 2? All right, Linda Ferrullo. Thank you, Linda, for doing this. Number 3 is Dr. Edelstein. Thank you, Dr. Edelstein, for doing this. Number 4, Carmen Lorenz. Thank you, Carmen. Number 5, hello, Denise Sleeper. And number 6, oh, hi, Karen. All right, Karen, welcome. So let's start over here. Let's see if we can pull this off. Remember your number. We're going to start right here. Sure, if you would.
Number 1.
Number 1. There you go.
2.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Don't. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
7. 4, 5,
2,
3, 4, 5, 1,
2,
3, 4,
5,
6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6. Okay, everyone has a number? All right, so listen, so you're gonna follow your facilitator down to your room down at this wing down here. You'll meet with him for a while, then we'll meet back and have some food and have some fun and thank you and have a
So if you can say your name, and it doesn't mean you have to be affiliated with anything. So if you want to address what made you come here, you can do that. Or if you're just an interested citizen, that's fine. So feel whatever you want to say as far as your being here would be great, that you want other people to know. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Melford. I work at the Family Resource Center in downtown Laconia.
Leonard Campbell with New Hampshire Catholic Charities, and poverty is certainly at the root of what we work to eliminate, to empower people.
I'm Liz Dunkett. I'm from the Community Action Program of Belknap counties. I'm the case manager for homeless and family housing. So I work a lot with the homeless community.
I'm Sharon Ryla. I was asked to come here by the director of my son's daycare at Belmont Early Learning Center because I have friends and myself that at one time had gotten assistance and stuff like that, so she wanted my input.
I'm Katie Yauch with Central New Hampshire VNA Hospice in our family program. Linda Tunnicliffe, I'm on the board for Got Lunch. Look at me.
I'm Erica Johnson. I'm president of St. Vincent de Paul and also Gilbert Welfare. And my concern is jobs and also education in the community.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Kern, and I'm retired, and I come to be interested.
Well, we're glad you're here.
I'm Charlie Smith. I'm here because I'm concerned about this poverty epidemic.
John Walker. I'm involved with the Got Lunch Laconia program and work better together.
My name is Dennis Dobe. I'm the principal at Woodland Heights Elementary School here in Laconia, and we work with many young families. And many of those, unfortunately, are challenged economically and challenged with an awful lot in life.
I'm Dave Blanchard. I'm excuse me, executive director of the Appalachian Mountain Teen Project, and we work with youth and families that live in poverty.
Great.
Thank you. Do you have an extra one?
This is coming across in front.
Okay, good. Thanks for the warning.
Thanks, Len.
Okay, first order of business, they wanted us to kind of give some rules that we're hoping everyone will abide by in the discussion. One is that each person gets a chance to talk, that one person talks at a time. People do not cut other people off. That you speak for yourself. Everyone comes from their own perspective, and we want a chance to hear where that's coming from. So speak for yourself and assume the best intentions of others that are speaking. Sometimes we in our mind, we put them someplace else. So if we assume that they have best intentions in giving us their opinions, that's a place that we can all then have a dialogue about what's coming up. It's okay to disagree. If you feel hurt by what somebody says, you can say so. So I proclaim that. You can say so. Stick to the issue, challenge ideas. Really, we're hoping to get to go deep into this issue, not just okay. Here's the solution, and we just should do this. And we really want to get into something that is going to move the community as a whole to action. So we're going to push a little bit in our discussions. If you talk to people who are not here, don't say their names. Most important is honor confidentiality. What goes on here stays here. I'm not sure how that works with the filming of this, but that's what it says here. So feel whatever you feel comfortable in what you say, knowing all of that. Help the facilitator keep things on track. I would really appreciate that. And also, from my point of view, because it is my job to keep things on track and to move forward, know that it's not personal if I ask us to move on. I'm not trying to shut anyone off, but we do want to accomplish what people came here for today. And any other rules that anybody wants to add to that? That seem important to this group? The water man.
That's mine.
Okay, I'm going to take notes here. Sometimes it's easier for me to just take notes as we go along, so I'm not going to ask for a note taker. I think that's it. So what I want to do? I have enough of these. Let me see if I can get down this one. Al, do we have any more copies of this?
Oh, yeah.
I think I have more than 10.
There's extras too. Thank you.
I know. One.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
Oh, yours.
I think just, do we have enough? No, we need one more, right?
What, agenda? Yes.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, probably an agenda.
Okay, PowerPoint
Yeah,
and
you're right.
agenda. Okay, this is my copy, so I can't give you this. Al just put down together, I think you know him. Okay, so, I hope there's someone here with really young eyes that can help us read this, because it's, that's why I put,
I got new glasses.
I won't, so, Dave, they're going to get one.
Oh, great, thanks.
It just looks like the second one's in there.
All right, well, let's go through this. Again, this is somewhat of the survey. If people are familiar with the survey, this was a survey on the perception of the community around poverty, and it was sent out to, I think we got back about 170 responses. And demographics were somewhat skewed towards higher age group and also higher income and higher education. So we tried to get, but it isn't a research study, it's just a perception of
Was that intentional?
no, we did try to kind of get it to others, and it just, so it is what it is. And because it really is perception, it's just take it that for what it is. Okay. So, the question in Belknap County, how serious an issue is it?
Not an issue at all for 25.
Yes. Most people, and I won't get into the numbers, but most people, great majority, thought it was an issue or a serious issue. The current community involvement in the past 12 months, have you donated money or time to an organization that helps people living in poverty? I think that was 98% said they did. So 78. That's what I meant to say. 78%. 78% said they had. Income levels used by the U.S. Census to determine that a family of 4 is living in poverty. The majority thought it was 22,000 and something. And the majority thought it was between 18 and 22,000 is what the U.S. Census uses to determine if a family of 4 is living in poverty.
Which one is right?
It's the next slide. That was when we decided to present the survey, that was exactly why we wanted to also give the facts. So here's what the perceptions are, and here are the facts. The poverty guidelines for a family of 4 living in poverty is $23,050. So it was about right. The question on the survey, what level of income do you believe that a family of 4 needs to earn in order to pay for their basic needs? And the majority of people thought between 30 and 50,000 they would need. The actual living wage for 2 adults and 2 children, if you look at the bottom, the annual before tax income that's required for all of these things is $52,000.
Wow.
So that's compared to what's considered poverty and what is actual living wage in this area. And it's different in different places in the country, as you can imagine. Hourly wages, living wage for 2 adults and 2 children for someone that's working full-time. A living wage is $25 an hour in order for that person to maintain this, the needs, the basic needs. The poverty wage is $9.83. The minimum wage is $7.25. Typical wages in Belknap County, this just kind of gives you an idea of what the wages are in Belknap County, and you can have a look at what they are. And how they compare to the poverty wage. And they've pulled out the food service wages. Because that is one of the higher number of people, of employment opportunities for folks in Belknap County. And what was, I think, noted was the median age for food preparation and serving related occupations is $9.71.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
This living wage is $25.24. Is that for one adult, or is that a combination of both?
That is for one adult
people?
working full-time.
One job?
One job, in order to make a living, the living wage, what is determined as the amount of money you would need to take care of the basic needs. So if there was one person working full-time, they would need to be making $25 an hour in order
For basic needs.
For basic needs.
Or 2 people could.
Or, yeah.
Split it.
Two people.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Or they can
That's why I asked
both
that
be working
question.
4 jobs.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, right.
No matter what, the household needs to be made at a bare minimum. New Hampshire policy, housing policy, had this huge workshop regarding this too, was that the basic minimum that a household of 4 will need to make is no less than $26 an hour. However, that works between the 2 adults.
Right.
So one could be working full-time, the other one could be working 2 part-time jobs.
Right.
So no matter
That's
what,
what I
this
was
is
wondering.
very close to $26 an hour.
Thank you for clarifying that.
The next slide is around sales wages. So this is for sales and related occupations, again, something that is here. The median wage is $10.45. And you can see what specific ones are as you look down there.
Missing from this are people who work in the hospitality business doing cleaning and that sort of work.
Major causes of poverty. This is really hard.
Yes.
What are the following factors are major causes of poverty? And 82.9%, I somehow somebody told me that, is that it's too many jobs being part-time or low wages. So the majority of people thought that was a major cause of poverty, is that there are low-paying part-time jobs in the area, which in many ways I think has been shown.
Excuse me. They put that drug abuse at 74.9%.
I was surprised to see that too.
I think what the common perception is too, though, is
Yeah.
that some people believe, you know, they're unable to, they're going to stay in poverty because they are drug abusers.
Right.
And because this is all about perception here.
I agree.
This isn't an actual fact.
And that's what's important to remember, is
Who
that
came up with the metrics on this?
I don't, it doesn't seem possible.
It's interesting that drug abuse, too many immigrants.
it was actually a survey that was put together by Harvard University, and we borrowed it. So, yeah, but it's important, it's an important thing to know, that that's the perception.
Right.
Real or
Speak for
not,
the
that's
people
the
that feel
perception that is out there in the community. And that's one of the reasons for the dialogue, is to talk about, so is that the reason, and what can we do about it, or is that the perception, and how do we educate people so that they understand what the other parts of
I was going to say that this really just represents a perception of a pretty narrow
Yes.
demographic.
Right.
And it's such a
I was thinking
huge problem
That's
in
right.
surveys in
That's
general, done by schools, done by organizations, and
And all of that needs to be just taken into account. It's what it is, it's not anything that we're going to make, we're really not going to make actions based on it. It's just to put in your mind as far as something to remember.
Do you find being a principal that there is, you're in what, the elementary?
elementary, yes.
Do you find there's a lot of drugs in the elementary, like from elementary is?
Certainly not among kids, and I really wouldn't be in a position to comment on, use abuse by parents.
Right, yeah,
But
right.
I think that,
But there are,
I suspect that it's in this community as it's in most communities, but I could make an educated statement about that.
there are symptoms children display when there's problems going on.
At home, that may be related to drug abuse.
So the next slide, what groups are more likely to be poor? This was put together by Heartland Alliance of Chicago, which did pulled together a lot of various parts of research to look at, there's a word for that research, where they pull everything together and give you a compilation of the whole, of everybody's research. It's not just one person's research. I can't remember the name, but anyhow. What groups are more likely to be poor? Women face greater risk than men and comprise a greater number of all people in poverty. Single-parent households. Children. There, I just saw a slide showing the difference between what has happened in the last 5 years to the poverty rate of children, the population in general, and seniors. Seniors have stayed about the same. The population in general has gone up a little bit, and children have spiked really high. And I wish we had that. It's really
Is that
good.
right? Is that like in New Hampshire?
It's in New Hampshire and the country.
Because in my town, Meredith, the rate of children has gone down in the past 2 or 3 years.
And
And so,
But this is the rate of children living in poverty in general. So of all the children, no matter what number that
Right.
is, the rate has gone up of those that are living in poverty. And I think we see it in the free and reduced lunch numbers that are happening in our area. Immigrants face greater risk, and people with disabilities face a greater risk of poverty. The events that are more likely to push people into poverty: loss of a job. 20% of people enter poverty when the head of the household loses a job. Decline of earnings. half of all who fall into poverty do so because there's a decline in what they're making for some reason. No high school degree, single-parent household, having children, and disability. And so those who become disabled are more likely to be pushed into poverty. What contributes to these events happening? Growth in low-wage work. And this is something I think is pretty compelling. 1/4 of the workforce in the United States earn poverty-level wages. And in Belknap County, we just learned that it's 1/3. So 1/3 of the workforce, so these are people who are working, are at poverty-level wages.
That's in Belknap County?
That's Belknap County. Wage declines for dropouts, teen births. Half of all non-marital childbearing starts during the teen years, which results in a high risk of not graduating from high school and a 20% reduction in the girl's expected adult income. Not working full-time. Part-time work is particularly prevalent for single parents and people with disabilities or parents caring for children with disabilities. Incarcerated experience. If someone has a previous incarceration, they have a 10 to 20% decrease in their likelihood, in their wages. And it increases the likelihood of unemployment. And violence. Having experienced violence increases employment instability for some women, while leaving an abuser can render women without any income. So these are what contributes to the decrease in people, or it increases their push into poverty. The survey in expected community benefits for reducing poverty, the greatest benefits that people saw was a reduction in crime and an improved economy. And some of the facts around there, that poverty and crime, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, said there is a direct link between poverty and crime levels. Higher levels in unemployment results in higher levels of property crime. And I think this is both wage and unemployment affect crime, but wages play a larger role in increased crime. So what they're saying is that not unemployment affects crime as much as low wages affects crime in the community. GAO also saw a higher rate of poverty can result in lower rates of economic growth. When individuals who have experienced poverty enter the workforce, their contributions may be restricted or minimum, while others may not enter the workforce in a significant way. Higher rates of poverty in the community can discourage private sector investment. And this is one of the things that we wanted to talk about, is what is the effect on the community, that poverty not only affects that family that is experiencing poverty, but it affects the whole community. In looking at dropout rates, high school students from low-income families dropped out of school 6 times as often as students from high-income families. And the high school dropout rate among persons 16 to 24 was highest in low-income families as compared to high-income families. And as far as property values, communities starting at 5% poverty must exceed 10% before any noticeable decline in values occurred in property values. Communities starting at 10% poverty begin suffering value and rent declines with any subsequent increase in poverty. In regard to that, the poverty rate in Laconia right now is 12.6, and the rate in Belknap County is 8.6, and this is higher than the state rate in poverty. So,
What's the state rate?
yeah, I think Belknap County is higher than the state rate, so.
Wow. Okay. Do you know
So-
the population in Laconia? Do you know?
Just under 16,000.
Is that, I thought it was 14,
15,000.
15,000.
That's why we have all these.
It's about 2,000 people.
So,
Well, and what's,
Yeah, 14.
what's striking too is you only have a 12.6% in Laconia, but then you talk about the childhood poverty rate being higher, you have 53%. And granted, free and reduced lunch, I think, is like 150% of the federal poverty rate, but even so, it's not that high above. 53% of the students at the high school qualify for free and reduced lunch in Laconia, and it's even higher in the elementary, isn't it like 60 or something?
Yeah, mid-60s.
Mid-60s?
But Dennis, I think your school is the highest of the schools in the city.
okay, I'm going to ask you to take 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask each of you what one thing of what we just talked about strikes you. What's an aha moment that you had as we went through it? What stands out to you as a really important thing that you're going to leave here with and think about?
I think the growth in low-wage work, and you shared that Belknap County, in Belknap County, 1/3 of the workforce.
That's not fair, John, because that
I'm sorry,
was- I was going to say that.
Oh,
I was on the same lines as that.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
that.
going to go around.
I know.
I'm going to go around, and we'll start with John, and you can repeat it, or you can, yes, you can, we'll give it a little bit, another vote, but think about what it is that jumps out the most. And if you have 2 or 3 things, you might want to go to number 2 when we come to get you. So John, Dennis?
Well, just a slide that, you know, the things that contribute to poverty, you know, how people get to poverty,
Mhm.
and identifying those, and building a strategy to reduce poverty based on that.
Mhm.
It's kind of like the blueprint. If you take care of these things, you stand a good chance of reducing poverty.
And build strategy on what,
Yeah, the
contribution to poverty
Yeah.
status.
But yeah, no, you're right on.
I think the fact that a living wage for a family of 4 is, you know, $52,000 a year, you know, because you got a lot of comments. I hear a lot of comments working with families and low income. Gosh, you know, if these people that are on disability and TANF and food stamps that are getting in like maybe $10,000 or $15,000 a year for a family of 6, just budgeted better or saved better, they'd be all right. But I think the reality is this shows that, you know, a family of 6 making $10,000 a year in benefits is nowhere close to having a living wage, and I think that really is an indication of the true problem.
That's, yeah, I was gonna say, if you want to take mine now, oh.
no, I don't mean. You want to defer? Okay.
Well, mine's sort of the same. I was gonna say, it's not like an aha, but the minimum wage is $7.25.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if anyone knows, that's federal, right?
Mhm.
Can the state have their own minimum wage?
Yeah,
They can.
yeah,
It-
it has to be.
That's right, yeah. that's just-
$7 and what?
It's $7.25, the minimum wage. The poverty wage is $9.83. So, yeah, you do the math. I mean,
Mhm.
you're not even, that's frustrating, how policymakers can't seem to budge on that.
Okay, basically, first deferring, intern.
The ignorance of people's perceptions of what contributes to poverty and the reality of what contributes to poverty. Blaming people who are using or who are being subsidized because they can't have a living wage through taxes for the reality of that's the only way that they're going to actually be able to survive. So it's that ignorance that creates that gap between what people think and between what is really going on.
Good difference, but I'll put you
I think in my general consensus is the fact that I'd like to know where this demographic comes from. Because honestly, are we talking, who are these upper class? Are these lower class? Is this it? Because I think this is totally construed because of the fact the drug abuse, the too many jobs being part-time or low wage, you know, and mental illness is a major cause of poverty. I mean, that kind of goes on with Len too, with what he's saying. But
What page, please?
you look at all these factors, major causes of illness. I'd like to know who the 200 people are, because I'd like to know what demographic they're coming
Well,
from.
we have that in we just wasn't down there, but as I said, the demographics were very skewed. So it's only a point of starting a discussion. It's not that.
This is concrete fact. No, and I
It
agree
isn't
with
that if we did, we were able to do a real scientific cross-section, but this was just for a way to start a conversation.
Yeah, because
So-
my thought is we have to teach the community first that a lot of these factors are not what revolves in what causes poverty. There's a major, no, we need to teach the community first of this is what causes poverty.
Right.
I think my aha moment there was the actual living wage versus the typical wages in Belknap County. Because from my own personal perspective, I don't live a lack of luxury by any stretch of the imagination, but my actual living wage, my mortgage, and my child care, and my medical is much higher than this. And I have a 1,200 square foot house, so it's not like I have a huge house by any stretch of the imagination, you know? And the typical wages in Belknap County, I think that's high, personally, looking down the list, you know what I mean? So to take what I have to pay out versus what the typical wages in Belknap County is, I think there's a huge difference there, personally.
I agree, I found that discrepancy as well when I was looking at that and looking at and doing budgets with families sometimes, and I know Lynn does that as well, I think those, I agree. But my moment had to do with what events are more likely to push people into poverty. And because I think, you know, I see that all the time as well. And, you know, the loss of a job being a big factor. And there are jobs out there now, but they're low-wage jobs. And you know, I think it's challenging. And a lot of people who might have lost a job, even with a degree, are, you know, they're all kind of fighting for the same jobs out there. And I've seen a real, it's challenging. Those events are definitely happening right now.
My aha moment was the lack of any information on the dropout rate of pregnant teens or babies having babies. And they talk a little bit about the reasons for it, but a lot of the having delivered food to the Got Lunch program, it's babies having babies and they're single moms and they're dropouts, and they don't really categorize that. And I wondered what the rate is in Belknap County for teen pregnancies. It's not addressed at all. Because that's a woman, single head of household, and a dropout. That's 3 strikes against her.
Right. We do have that. We should probably highlight.
I think education too, I mean, you know, people don't lose it in job, we educate them in a different field. I work with a lot of people through the welfare system where they're being educated for something different. The problem in the community is there is no jobs here, even if they get educated. You know, I have volunteers that went through the school and they want to be volunteers because they can't find a job that they trained for. And I think also, I agree with Leonard, I think we need to educate the community what poverty is all about. It's not that the people are lazy like we hear all the time, well, they're lazy, they don't want to work. That's not the case. You know, they just can't find the jobs. And some of them actually don't know how to go out and interview for a job. I think they need somebody hold their hand against once in a while because, you know, and I think that's where the whole community comes in and helps everybody out.
I'm looking at it from a health aspect, as far as drug abuse and criminality. I think that's a high contributor to poverty. I think there should be something, I don't know what's done really now to prevent this, but I just think that's a big issue in towns. And if you could get kids away from that and parents away from that, if they do, you know, become into that in the first place, then you're going to get rid of a lot of poverty because people are going to look for other things in life.
Well, see, that's tough because I think people that do abuse drugs, they're pushed there because they're in despair. They're in poverty now, and it sort of compounds it even worse. And then, you know, with
So can I disagree with that? In that I would go the other direction. I think that's what you're saying, Charlie, is, if I'm hearing it, is that drug abuse is a result of higher poverty.
Yeah.
A result of lower wages.
Yeah.
So that we would get rid of the drug,
That's what I was.
we would get rid of some of the drug abuse if there was better wages, if there was less poverty.
Rosemary, I'd like to disagree with you as well. I know that I get very frustrated sometimes when I'm trying to help some of the families that I work with. I'm the director of the Appalachian Mountain Teen Project, so we work with a lot of kids and families in poverty. Anyway, I find a lot of times that when I'm trying to get them support for basic needs like food and household supplies and so forth, I have to help the families jump through a whole lot of hoops because there's this perception that they're probably just in poverty because they're abusing drugs or something like that, or that if they get benefits, that somehow that money's going to go for drugs instead of support. I can't tell you how many times I personally have had to vouch for a family as the director of an agency saying, oh, no, there's no drug use, these people are just poor. Right. But I think sometimes that perception of, you know, if you're in poverty, therefore you must be using drugs or criminals or something.
Well, I didn't mean it that way, I just meant that it was a contributing factor to it.
Well, it is.
I was in the healthcare business for a long time.
It is.
So,
And in the sense that nicotine is a drug, then yes, it does become.
Right.
When I just did a budget with somebody, $294 a month is what the cost of the cigarettes are, and to ask somebody to quit, it's basically impossible. So yeah, in that sense, that will contribute.
I think this is a question that often comes up, is what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
What,
Yeah,
what
you
causes
can
what,
see it both
and
ways.
what's the,
Right.
But what your perception was what is shared by a lot of people in the community based on the survey. So I think, right. So I think that's what the survey serves the person, that you're not alone in that perception.
Yeah.
And it can be kind of discussed. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so given all of this, what they're wanting us to do is to think about if you had the power to change one thing on the local level. So we're not we really didn't want it to be about the state level or the federal level because there's other strategies that need to happen around that. But on the local level, as a community, there's one thing you could change to reduce poverty in Belknap County. What would it be? So I'm going to give you, because I want you to think a little bit about this, and I know some of you have thought about this for a long time, but others have just heard the conversation and looked at some of the facts, and so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to write down 2 or 3 things you would change on the local level. And then we can talk about what those are. But why don't you just take some minutes to think and write. Who wants to start? Lynn?
1964, President Johnson called Sergeant Shriver into his office and said, we're going to start a program that's going to cut poverty in the United States. I'm going to announce this in 2 weeks. Go figure out what I'm going to say. And the community actions were born. And they said, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the funding, all of the resources, we're going to say to the local community, here, it's yours. You figure it out. You know what to do best. You know how to do it because you're there. So go do it. And the community actions were born with that. That's what I would change locally is people are receiving different sources of funding. But it's all these different things that are locked into whatever that can't go towards helping people be empowered to move out of poverty, which is why I think some of that perception is there about, yeah, it's the welfare system that keeps them there. It would be taking what are the resources people are receiving, letting people use them for what they need to move out of poverty with a plan, which is what the TANF programs of Clinton were doing back in the 1990s. So, did you capture that with combining local, I hate to use the word entitlements, combining local entitlements to empower people. The way the caps did it. It was working.
Okay.
Somehow remove stigma, restore hope. And that's how you do that exactly. But I personally feel, as others have said, it's not a matter of being lazy. I do believe, though, in some cases, it's a matter of people losing hope. Because it is so hard. The reality is so harsh. And humans are only so strong. And if they're not supported, if there aren't people there that have their back, organizations and people who care enough to do what has to happen, there's no hope for them. And the children learn that.
It is happening too.
I work with a few single moms who just need a little extra. You know, they don't want to take advantage of the system, they just need a little help, and they keep getting turned away because they make too much. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous because they're not able to be, I mean, you see them working so hard. Like one girl I work with has 2 children, 2 young children. She's trying to raise them. She's trying to get them a good home. And she keeps getting discouraged because she keeps getting turned away. She's not getting help from her other half, which is now an ex, you know what I mean? And you just want to see the people that are really trying to be able to empower themselves and help. And I think,
So what would that help look like?
I think that there's a lot of hands tied within the system that they can't help them. And I think that
So
that
have
goes
the
along with
system
number one.
respond to,
Yeah, to the individual needs versus just what's going on. Well, you make too much and oh, exactly,
I'll
exactly.
go talk to them over there.
Exactly, you
And
know,
then they come down and say, no, we can't help you because you're making too much money. Go talk to
Right.
them over there.
listen to individual wants and needs and see how you can help them based on what, the black and white of the system. I don't like that at all.
I think the term that goes with that is called unhinging, with combining, I think it's on the first one. I think it's called unhinging.
could you just look that up? I know, he has that, Google. Oh, wow. Yes.
Well, what I do with some of my people that I see through the welfare and same with the fall, I follow them through. Sometimes I will call them to see how they're doing because I know they won't come back for the second time because they were embarrassed the first time. And also pass it forward. They help each other occasionally too. Somebody that I see might need help and she said, well, you can call her and I will help her. And I think working, again, the community together. But I think the follow-up is really, it's really worked out well because they really know you care about them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think
and I
that's
think that's
huge,
very important. Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Personal contact.
Yes, I think it's important.
Absolutely.
And make them feel like they're human.
Well, you treat them like a human being, number one. I mean, they're not treated like that most of the times. My parents always told me, treat them like you want to be treated. So I'm not rude to anybody, but I won't take any rudeness from anybody either. I will tell them to come back another time when they're, but I still help them.
But sometimes it takes an awful lot for somebody to
It
ask
is.
for help.
It
you know,
is. It
and
does.
It
It
really
does.
does. So, and I've seen it a lot, when people ask for help and, by a town or whatever,
Right.
and they get totally treated rude, and they're like, I'm never asking for help. And it shuts that door, and that's not what it's there for, and it's there to help people
Yes.
and to get them back on their feet, so that way they can be an active member of society,
And especially when they have children, how can you deny them? I mean, you look at those poor children, they didn't pick their parents. So you work as a family, you work as a unit together. I just, I do a lot of compassion with a little tough love, but mostly it's all compassion. And I'm sure I probably get taken at times, I've been told that already, but to me, I didn't look at that when I helped myself.
We need more jobs that pay a living wage.
With that is education too. It's very important. That the jobs, I mean, there's jobs out there, but the people aren't educated enough to get those
Well,
jobs.
the education thing, I was going to make a comment when you said that. I don't think it's so much about the education. For example, I have a bachelor's degree and an associate's degree, and I'm working on my master's, and I've been unemployed for 2 years. People do not, I even read the other day that they will take your resume, and if it doesn't have, they'll send it through the machine, if it doesn't have highlight words for the type of job, it gets thrown out. They don't even bother to look at your character, who you are as a person, what you might have been through, what type of person you are. They're just looking at the experience. So the education, it's almost.
See, but I feel the opposite of you.
That's a
Totally feel the opposite of you, is because when I first moved here, I was in case management for 18 years. I've been in mental health and homelessness. I don't have a bachelor's degree, but I've been doing this for 18 years. I got denied so many jobs because I didn't have a minimum of a bachelor's, and I was like, that's fine. You want to go hire the newbie, the 22-year-old person who doesn't have a lick of experience, go right ahead, but don't call me after because that's ridiculous. And that's frustrating too, but there's way too many changes. You can't pick one. Absolutely cannot pick one. There will never be one local change. that is going to, combine local entitlements to it, absolutely. You're going to have to restore the stigma. We have to educate the community of why developers should develop here, why businesses should be in Belknap County. And the issue with Laconia alone is it's a very tourist area. You get those jobs for the summer, and then where are they for the winter? Gone.
Oh, like areas like that.
And that's a huge issue with them. But they will never, every single one of these need to change. And that's a lot. It's a lot of change in what is proposed in a very short period of time.
But I think, just look around, obviously, everything in the past 3-4 years has been just closing down, We need to find a way to encourage new business within the area, because that in turn will help with the poverty level. And I think that goes hand in hand with education, I, as a manager, get 50 applications for one job. So, you know what, that's because there's not enough jobs available, and that doesn't have anything to do with that lack of degree or whatever. It's all about, there's so many people out there that want to work. There's just not enough jobs available for them, And that's a huge problem.
I did, yeah. I just wanted to say that, and this is what I've been thinking for a long time, and then I have to move this completely off topic, because I'm not about it. That one person can make a difference, and that, when I talk about educate, I don't mean going to school, but educating about, what's going on in our community, understanding it, and then getting out there and voting about it. And I think that's something that we don't talk about very much in these circles, and I've been going to these meetings for a while, but I really believe that there's a lot of people that don't think that they can make a difference because they're just one person, and I believe that you can make a difference as one person. I'll do my second one later.
Okay, let me just see, I haven't got everyone.
I haven't done mine.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I would agree with the education part, and I would also say that there are jobs that you can get, like trade jobs, that offer whomever is involved the opportunity to get an education through whatever trade they're in. From different companies. There's one way up north, I just heard advertised that you could go and work for them. I forget what it is. I think it's some type of metal company. And you work for them for a couple of years, and then they will pay for your education. So I think jobs like that will make a big difference.
I don't know if this is what this is what I hear a lot, and I think is that to be able to train and educate to the jobs that are available in the community, rather than, just globally educate.
Well, in the state, or whatever, place you're in. I also wanted to say that I have a friend, and he's retired, and he worked in communications for a long time, and he goes around and he helps people get jobs. He tells them how to do it, how to fill out the forms and which direction to go in, and he's helped so many people. So I think, counseling for jobs would be a big thing, I think, to help people. Because I don't think everybody knows really how to go and do it.
But there is a program here in Laconia, and that's the Workforce Investment Act program, through New Hampshire Job Works, that are begging for people to come see them. And I'm consistently sending them their way.
For begging?
I'm sorry, what is this?
My local
Workforce.
It's Workforce Investment Act. It's run through the NCAP, that's why I know. But Melinda Wilson here in Laconia is fantastic about trying to help people. And it doesn't matter what education, it doesn't matter.
I mean that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Charlie?
My local change, a lot of this I think is about income disparity, and I'd like to see unions brought back to the city, because unions stand up for people's workers' rights, they stand up for your wages, they stand up for how much time you get off from work. I think some people probably push to the brink, and there's nothing, they can't really do anything about it because they need to work. And we could stop the union busting like the right to work bills in our state.
I'd like to mention some things, and I know they're beginning, they probably have been going on for a little bit of time, but we need to do a better job of getting the information out, I think. I think we need to come up with a strategy to get a paradigm shift in the community, in all of us. Change the way we think about what is needed or how somebody is considered successful. It's not a college degree. I mean, that truly is it, but we need to change that thinking. That's the thinking we need to change. I happen to know there are 80 high-paying jobs at New Hampshire ball bearing right now. They'll take kids coming out of Hewitt, for example, that have gotten proper training, and they'll go into high-paying jobs right out of high school. There are the jobs out there, and some of this has already been mentioned. We need to, and I know this is something that's going on through Laconia Listens. There's partnerships between the Laconia school system, SAU 30, and the high-tech jobs in our community to try to get these kids there and also get the word out there. Hey, Laconia, New Hampshire, is graduating these high-tech qualified students. And once they know they have a source of that type of employee here, that will help attract business.
That's a big one.
But
I know what you're talking about.
All the years you've been in college.
Well, see, I think what you're talking about is more of it's an individualistic society that we live in. America, is obsessed with Hollywood and riding big, living large, having this big dream. So when someone out of school, they want the desk job, they want the big bucks money, they don't want to get their hands dirty or, work that type of job because of the stigma that comes with it. And that's a real major
That job right
society.
there that John's talking about pays more an hour than either.
Yeah, it does.
I considered it. I heard that Alan came to our meeting a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, well, wait a minute here. That's kind of crazy that I've been doing this for so many years, and
Social services have always been really important.
So John, people aren't coming to get that job? Kids
They're
and
not,
stuff,
they
they're not
can't find qualified people to fill the jobs.
all there.
They have to have training and they can't.
So,
They need to do more training. Hewitt is ramping up to be able to provide more qualified employees. And there's really something very good that is building here. But if we can't train or change the way parents think, they want their kid to go to college. They don't want them to go get their hands dirty in a factory somewhere.
right.
I think, we have elected officials still in our towns. I mean, they need to do something, re-elect them and send them down to Concord. What do they do for us? I mean, they're cutting programs, they're doing this, and we're losing people left and right because there's no money out there.
It's funny
So I
that you
think
say
the
that,
elected
because
officials-
that was my second
Yeah,
global
I mean,
change.
They need to
is
do
that
something for us.
the
They need to be
state-
a voice. They need to be our voice in the office.
How often do you see them?
Well, I see one all the time.
Well, besides
No, but you
Bill.
don't, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't. That's the
You
point, you
don't,
get
ever.
elected, you don't see them, you don't even see them in Concord. If you
Where-
go down for the
Where are they
meetings,
here?
their seats
They
are
should
empty.
be right here.
I
They should
see
be
them.
here, exactly.
I see them, and if I don't see them, I pick up the phone and call them. If I have an issue or something I want them to attend to.
Will they return your phone call? No.
Yes, yes.
Really?
Just
Yeah,
off
no,
Kingsbury,
it's
he's our
really-
state rep.
I mean,
So do we have,
He's here, actually.
anybody have more to just things that came to mind?
Similar.
I would love to see some sort of emergency community fund that could help people that get themselves in a bind, that just need a little leg up so they don't fall into poverty, because so many people that are just teetering on the edge of poverty, living paycheck to paycheck. Let's say their car goes. There's no public transportation here. They have no way to get to work. So then they lose their jobs. So then they fall into poverty. Whereas if there could be some sort of emergency fund that people could go to and say, hey, I can't afford to get my car fixed, but if you could help me get my car fixed, I could keep my job and continue to support my family. It could make all the difference. I mean, we work with so many families all the time that, sometimes they aren't at poverty, but then they hit poverty because life comes crashing down on them and there's nowhere to turn for help.
That's microfinance. Mine was kind of off of, my second one was kind of off the number 11, is that the state is trying to get the kids that they educate to stay in the state. Our communities are aging, and a lot of kids that graduate are leaving the state to go elsewhere. And businesses get business credits. They hire kids outside of that just got out of college, and they within like I think it's like 3 or 4 years, and they stay here. I think they should set something up for businesses to give us tax credits if they hire someone that might have earned poverty level income the prior year or something like that, to bring more people on, and then to get them into maybe, as you were saying, the education system, the tech and
So
training.
tax credits for what, did you say, John?
Tax credits for businesses that will hire
I think,
people that might have, families.
How would
that
they
come
track
along.
I think that's already in effect.
Taxes, you do taxes, when they file their taxes. Your prior year taxes, I mean, if you,
Well, sometimes, I think as we're doing this, we don't need to figure out the ins and outs. This is kind of just
Yeah.
brainstorming, and we'll,
yeah.
as we go through it, then you figure out whether it's doable or not.
I wanted to go completely off topic and kind of get back to what I think is one of the biggest problems in our area is that there's no, and we've said it so many times, there's no community cooperative, there's no community sense of togetherness any longer. And I think it's ridiculous that there's fighting over the state school property. It's like, turn that into a farm and, begin to get back to how to simple. So we're not, we have an obesity epidemic, and it's, it's because everybody goes to the grocery store and they buy the cheapest food they have, and it's ramen noodles, as opposed to growing your own food and canning that and living off of that for the rest of the year. So if we could come together as a community and begin to change real, issues I feel that are just,
Go back to years ago, you're
Yeah.
saying,
yeah, and the values that have, and we have the ability to do those kinds of things in this area if we could forget about some of the red tape that we all feel that we have to get caught up in, and just say, I'm not going, we're going to do what we want to do as a community.
You're describing working for the common good?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have a
For each other.
4-year-old, and I feel the same way. I mean, life is so fast-paced, and I feel like I need to raise him on those values because he won't learn them elsewhere nowadays. You know what I mean? Like, we have very strong family values with our child, And I think that, we have like a little garden and stuff like that, so he can see how food grows and stuff. And I think that it's good to take a step back and let them see, rather than assuming that people are going to be out there to help them.
Right.
How do you help yourself before somebody else is going to help you?
Right. And it's okay to help your neighbor. You can go and help your neighbor too.
Second one that I put on there would be a program like something that we do, the Bridging Lives Enhancing Self-Esteem. It's a mentoring program that adults are working with families. The Upstream is doing it. You do it when you were doing the rapid rehousing and homeless prevention, that, there were funds, but it was tied into plans of helping people get back on their feet and actually empowering people so that people are not going to be just losing the hope. But it's based also on something that I think is ignored, and that's the Maslow hierarchy of needs. We're asking people to be successful when they're worried about survival. People will give up safety before they'll worry about survival. And so we're asking people to do something that is unrealistic. Psychologists have already known this. So again, it's working with giving people hope that yes, you can survive, you are safe. So let's start moving towards something that's going to empower.
Anything else? We're going to take this and combine them into topics so that we can really look at them individually, but.
Well,
this
you
is
all might
good.
be able to answer this question because I'm not familiar with it. But again, going back to the teenage pregnancy and dropout and single mom, is there a mentoring program to help encourage young girls who have quit school, have a baby, that could get them off of welfare and into a working job or
Yes.
job sharing?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
I mean, no, is it just?
Honestly, no.
That's
Yes,
not,
there is.
I don't believe there is. Not in the state of New Hampshire.
because that's where the mentoring
I'm
comes in.
sorry, but that's what my program does. How can you say there isn't one?
And we also do the same thing with one of our programs. So there are some.
So there are some,
There are
but
some
they're not
ones.
enough.
will say there's not enough, because I've never heard of your program.
Is there a-
Let me, I'd love to
Never.
respond to that.
Yeah, what is the success rate?
Karen, can I?
Yes, Dan.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, Liz, you just kind of hit a hot button. That is what our program does. We actually have a very good success rate. Our challenge, though, is, to be blunt, the Belknap County just doesn't seem to care in terms of wanting to fund anything. I am really wrestling with a very tough decision right now as an executive director about whether or not we're going to pull out of Belknap County completely, especially Laconia, because I compare the amount of community support and funding that we get in Carroll County. I mean, they practically sustain the program themselves and the work we do with teen moms and, you know, teens having tough times in Carroll County without me even having to write extra grants and so forth. Whereas the only way to sustain the work here in Laconia is by asking folks outside of Laconia and even other states to help pay for the work that's done here in Laconia. I beg, I plead, nobody in Laconia wants to fund programs like mine. So the reality is these programs are closing down and they're being cut and services are being cut because nobody's interested in investing in the youth in Laconia.
It's because explain your program.
I'm sorry?
You should explain your program.
Okay. We're basically a prevention/intervention program for teens that live in poverty and face challenging life circumstances. We work with teen moms, we work with youth in poverty, we work with youth that have different kinds of disabilities, we work with youth from families in generational poverty, they're at risk of dropping out of high school, kids that are starting to get involved with the law, kids maybe that were in placement and trying to come back to the community, all sorts of different things, but the one sort of common thread is youth living in poverty and youth living in challenging circumstances, and we provide one-on-one mentoring for them. We try and help them access resources. We try and support them through graduating high school and then connecting them to future opportunities beyond high school, basically just give them a chance in life through one-on-one relationships. And also so many of these youth just feel as isolated and alone and they don't belong, so we create a safe, supportive peer group, and we do a whole lot of activities and trips and different things so that they can kind of support and be a resource for each other. For example, one of the teen moms in our program collaborated with some other resources to try and make sure that other teen moms in the community that weren't involved with our program had access to basic needs like food, clothing, you know, stuff like that. So we basically empower the kids, help the kids, you know, find a future, and also at the same time mobilize them to advocate for a larger group of people that aren't in our program. But like I said, there is just no funding in Laconia. Laconia is not interested in funding
Okay,
these
so
programs.
as far as helping teens who are pregnant and drop out of school, there are a few programs. There's DAYS program, there's also the Family Resource Center. We just got funding for a home visiting program for teen mothers. So there are some, but you know, we have this down here as, is there enough, is there funding?
Well, if he's thinking of pulling out,
Yeah.
he's got to have a good reason.
Well, I have no money. I can't sustain
I know.
it.
Well,
We should add this one to the local changes, our tax structure in the state of New Hampshire, so we can get proper funding for these programs. Because we have a regressive tax system that is backwards.
Well, again, Carroll County, we serve Belknap and Carroll.
And they're not.
Carroll
I don't know
really-
whether they're not, but.
They're very buy into it. The school district over there gives us like 10,000. Laconia School District gives us nothing. Each town gives us money. The city of Laconia gives us nothing. There's all these different resources, local resources in Carroll County that are very willing to give and support, and there just isn't that in Laconia.
And what's happening with
Okay,
the
so I
teen
wanna
pregnancy
pull-
rate in
then you
Wolf?
need to-
Could I just put this for David? What's the difference in the teen pregnancy rate in Wolfboro now compared to what it was 10 years ago?
I don't think, I mean, I think teen pregnancy is definitely a bigger issue here in Laconia. I
No,
don't
but
have
in
the exact
Wolfboro,
numbers.
I just know that teen pregnancy was a huge issue in Wolfboro 15, 20 years ago, and now
It's not as big of an
it's
issue.
come down tremendously because of those efforts. But
Okay, anything else that we want to put down as far as local changes? What I'd like to do is to take this list and to pull together the general topics that we're talking about. And because then we're going to look at each one and not look at the specific things that we talked about, but just generally, who could be involved in making some of the changes. So if we look at the list,
education is a
City council.
well, let's get what the topics are. And if we're talking about education, we're talking about, are you talking about education of individuals?
Community.
Community
community
education.
education.
Awareness.
Community awareness.
How would you do that?
We're not going to talk about how yet. We're just going to put these down as far as community awareness of what?
Poverty.
Well, from what we've got there, it's business.
Community awareness of,
I'm just looking
Are you looking at
at
number
jobs. I'm just going by this.
what
But
job?
jobs, tax credits was up there.
So let's put that down as
Attraction of
employment, as the big,
Yep.
big change. We're going to look at employment, and one of the things we can do for employment is to increase the community awareness of available positions, available jobs, careers, of available careers. Is that?
I think it's more of the necessity of what businesses are. I think that's what we've been describing, is the importance of a good, strong business environment here in Belknap County.
How to
We
make
have
it
the
less
workers.
seasonal, exactly, how to make it less seasonal and more year-round.
Right.
Because we have plenty of area that businesses can move into, we need to give them a reason to move into it, you know?
And we have plenty of
Bringing more
workers.
So
businesses in.
strengthen the business environment.
It's called Belknap County Economic Development.
An increase in community awareness of available careers, I'm going to put. What else have we thought about under employment?
Well, I wouldn't do employment,
Let's
but
stick to employment now, and then we'll move on to, just generally in this list, what else are we seeing as important parts of changing the employment environment in Belknap
Well,
County?
you know, the other one that nobody mentioned is transportation is a big issue in this area too. I mean, a lot of people don't have cars, we don't have any public transportation. So if somebody gets a job in Concord, let's say down in Tilton, how do they get there? Yes, we have the cab bus, but they don't run,
they only run like
yeah, I mean,
once
I
or
see people waiting at the
4 times a
grocery
day
store
or
with the food,
something.
the crossing.
Can we put that under employment? Because
Yeah,
I
sure.
actually see a lot of
Yeah.
folks that can't.
Improve transportation.
Improve transportation, yeah.
Can you say something along there like, and it's not going to sustain itself by, it's got to always be subsidized?
Mhm.
People think somehow or other we can have an unsubsidized public
No, it
transportation
doesn't
system.
work.
I usually make this comment that once I stand up, I can't spell. So if you see anything, I don't know what it is. I
And
will
by the way, we do have already a public subsidized rural transportation system. They have those yellow things that go around a couple times a day.
Yeah.
Goes off most of the back roads of all of our state.
What yellow things?
The
They're called buses.
I know.
The
School bus.
School bus,
Oh,
well,
they use it for public?
They don't.
No.
We have it, we don't utilize it.
Oh, I see.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if you want to, and if you ever want to mess with one of the bus drivers on there, if you're concerned about adults getting on there when they shouldn't, go ahead.
Yeah. Good luck.
How about a mentoring program through successful businesses that would encourage, say, high school kids to come and observe or work or whatever, to see what they have to get to be job trained.
That's what they're
Not-
doing in merit.
Not necessarily a college degree, but to give them a mentoring program to come in to the ball bearing place that.
There's a place doing that right now.
Meredith's doing
Yeah,
that.
But if there were more of
Not
them, if there were
enough.
if you take the companies that are very successful and say, okay, why don't you show the rest how it's done? You know, have a mentoring program and a job sharing program for these moms that can't work full-time but can share a job.
But recruiting, people coming in to talk from different businesses at the high school, on different levels, and just telling them what's available, but they need to learn to get the job.
I think a factor in this is the corporation taxes are so high in New Hampshire that businesses won't come and stay here for long because of the high taxes on corporations.
It's an
Any
LLC
business.
tax.
Yeah, so that really needs to be settled, in Concord, so that these taxes are not high. And we can get companies to come in, so we can get jobs for our citizens.
I'm
I'm
going, because that isn't a local thing that we can
Yeah,
do,
well-
but I can say explore ways to attract businesses. So if we're talking about,
have one more.
let's see if it, as far as
Daycare.
employment.
Daycare is
Daycare's a
probably
big one,
the
yes.
number one issue.
Right.
Whether it's after school, before school,
Evening.
moms can't work section shift, daycare, and it is outrageous. And I will say that probably number one or two, because transportation is
Right up
that
there
one
with it, yeah.
of the biggest barriers that my clients face. Whether it's traditional or non-traditional.
Are there any businesses that help people with daycare?
What's that?
Are there any businesses that help people that with daycare?
Not
In this area, I mean, you know,
They're
like they
not
have-
I work for a corporation and they provide
Yes,
daycare assistance,
exactly,
but
yeah,
it's only for certain areas,
yeah,
not in this area.
yeah. I didn't think there was, that's why I asked.
Merrimack County
That
Jail.
is huge.
Their employees.
So you gotta go to jail?
Merrimack County Jail. Yeah, we bring the kids to jail. Their employees get an awesome discount, and it's open 2 shifts. And they may have to close the first one again, but, the second shift, but it was open 2 shifts. The state grounds has had daycare open 2 shifts. They knew and they understood that you want to get workers, you got to give a little with this, and it was actually very reasonable.
Well,
I think one of the things as far as childcare just is that, well, we're finding because we have the childcare resource and referral, is that there are a lot of slots out there. There are childcare are closing because people are not utilizing.
They can't afford them.
So it's, I think it may be a disconnect between the cost
right.
and the availability.
Well, and that's a lot of it.
Yeah, so I'm going to put that in the cost.
Reasonable
Cost.
One thing, and I don't mean to keep touting Southern Carroll County, I actually live here in Laconia, by the way, but another thing that Southern Carroll County does, this I think is beautiful, is they have this thing called the Children's Center, which is essentially a daycare that people that make very little money can still send their kids to, and it's essentially subsidized by the Southern Carroll County communities. And I would think that if Laconia could do something like that, it would help a whole lot of people.
On the same token, and then when we keep going, but, when my son was an infant, I was paying upwards of $800 a month for his daycare. And why bother working if I have to
Exactly.
pay $800 a month? On the same token, I love where he goes. He goes to Belmont Early Learning Center, which is a smaller center. So I don't have him in a huge daycare type of thing, and I like that. So to bring him to a certain place because that's where I'm going to get discounts or assistance is kind of double-edged sword, you know what I mean? Because I know that he's getting the structure that he needs at this daycare.
But if you're living in poverty and you're trying to survive and you don't have any options, having an option like the Children's Center in Wolfboro, which is actually, they do a nice job, by the way. But be that as it may, it's probably not as high class as the Belmont Learning Center, but for folks with limited options that are trying to survive, at least they know their kids are safe and cared for, they can get a job, they can put food on the table, they can survive. So that's,
Okay, I'm going to just move us because I'm realizing we're.
We need to hurry up, Karen.
Thank you, John, you were supposed to help me, thank you. Okay, so the other piece as I look at this that we're talking about is individual, I think, overall topic would be individual support. So as I look at this, responding to individual needs and financial mentoring would go under that. Anything else?
I think teaching them basically to apply for a job, but also how to dress for a job. You know, I worked with a young lady that applied for a job. She came into St. Vincent de Paul with a very low cut dress and high heels. I said, that's not going to work. You know, and we helped her. We got her some outfits, dressed, and she got the job. But I don't think she would have gotten the job if she wouldn't have first the way she looked the first time, you know. But she had no mentoring at home to, I said, did your mother let you go out this way? Oh yeah, she doesn't care. But you know, they need that part of it too. It's not just the education school-wise, but educating them and how to present them personally.
First impression is.
Yes, it is.
Great, really.
Yeah.
So ability to respond to individual needs, job preparation, skills, and unhinging funding so that it responds to the individual's need, not you have to fit into a program, I think is how I
But it's also financial literacy. It's, you know, it's the whole, and it's not just one piece, but it's how to help empower a person. What does a person need for that? Whether it's going to be more training, whether it's going to be, it's definitely going to be financial literacy. It's going to be understanding what do I need to do in order for me to get where I want to be in 5 years. Okay, but I can't tell the person what to do. We're good at doing that. It's helping that person come to his or her or their own understanding of what they want to have and saying, okay, how do you want to get there? And when they start coming up with some ideas that just I know won't work, is to try to help, okay, let's explore that a little bit. Let them see that, no, the big truck just isn't going to help you financially get there. Why might you still want it? So then they say, well, what would happen if I had a smaller car? Now we're getting somewhere. But again, it's not a quick fix. It's a long-term, it's a real investment in what we're doing, rather than saying, okay, next week we're going to be all set, we're not going to have poverty.
Individual support or?
Right.
that was what someone said as far as they need a little help. I think I was
I
back
think
to.
people need confidence in them. I think, you know, it's like, you know, oh, you're poor, you got nothing in there. They feel worthless. What about, you know, making someone feel that they're strong, that they're heading the right way, that they, you know, a little compliment, hey, you look good today, you know, might go a long way. You know, a little bit of kindness to really beef up that confidence within themselves.
People will change for two reasons. One is they're sick and tired of where they are, what they've been doing and how it's been, and something has to be different. The second thing is because somebody comes along, or some group comes along, whoever it is, and they say, you can do it, and come with me, we're going to make the change. And they buy into it, and then they realize, oh, this is something that I don't have to live with. Because all of us probably have one or two things that we could say, probably not good for me to be doing, but you know, I'm comfortable with it, I'll live with it. And yet we know probably that if I were to change that one thing or that, then life would be better. For people in poverty, it's probably more than one or two. So how do we do that?
So I put back to some of target the groups, I think this is what you said, Dennis, target the groups that are likely to be poor. So if we look at that list, what are we providing for each one of those groups? Promote hope and confidence and provide someone who believes in them, I think was just, what else did we say individually? And what are we, and I guess this is a community, to respond to individual needs, that was something like a community fund, so I'll put that down.
Can I ask a question for those who either went through the school system here or knows the school system? In my school system back in the suburbs of Washington DC and Maryland, the senior high school taught a class on how to buy a car, how to negotiate a loan, how to open up a checking account, how to do a budget, how to get a life insurance, or should get life insurance. And it's a basic class that every kid had to take. Do they teach that up here at all? It's like the basic 101, when you go out, graduate, this is how you should do that? They don't do that on the curriculum? Or nobody?
Largely not as a requirement. And I think that there are opportunities for young people to get that kind of experience and support, and probably in some particular programs, there's a strong connection to that. But by and large, that doesn't happen. And a big reason why it doesn't happen is because, dare I say, it's not tested. You may have heard of No Child Left Behind, and all the restrictions, requirements, and all that public schools must do, to comply with that law, to get the kind of test scores that we need to, so that we're not in trouble with the federal government. That really limits, in many cases, schools' ability to do things that they know are really important and really need to be done. It is a terrible situation to be in, but that's one potential complicating factor. The other is that the school day is only so long, the school year is only so long. Why is that the case? I mean, boy, we could talk at length about a lot of things related to the educational system, and is it doing what it could or should do? There are a lot of reasons why it's not.
Would it help poverty if they were taught how to open up a checking account or a credit card, or wouldn't
I
it
put that
help
down as
basic-
financial literacy for families and students.
Yeah, the
Good
basic
idea.
101.
That's right.
I think that one of the points that Linda has brought up a couple of times would fall into this individual support. We need to establish a program that is both teen pregnancy prevention and then support after it happens. That's the type of individual support. When I was with St. Vincent de Paul, we were doing financial aid interviews. It would break your heart to be talking to some 23-year-old girl who made a mistake when she was 18 and stayed with her boyfriend, maybe had another or two other children. Then he's off. She doesn't have the support from him, the financial support. He's unemployed, and she's in the system, this welfare support system. And Dennis said, these women don't have any hope. They're in hell.
Yeah.
So there's just regarding the target groups, that the pregnancy would be involved in all of that, as well as other.
Could I say, John made a choice? Not a
Instead of a
mistake.
mistake.
Made a choice. And the reason for that is that, will we get somewhere in here? Getting some kind of a, what is the culture of poverty?
No, we're not going to get into that.
I mean, is there some place where we educate the community on what is poverty? What is the culture of poverty?
I was wondering, are you putting in a community aspect next?
We can do that, I can do whatever you like.
Well,
So
we
you
can-
want
we can
a
have
community?
Because a 15-year-old girl from a family that's not necessarily a high-functioning family.
Still a choice.
And that's the culture.
Still a
That's
choice.
what
We won't get into that because that isn't part of the topic.
Break that stigma.
My big to the community, is that what we're going to?
One more thing about individual, just
Yeah.
to sum it all. My father, when I was 17 and graduated from high school, he said, "You're going to college. You're not waiting a year, you're going to college." And I said, "I'm not going to go to college. I want to, have fun, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "You're going to college." And I went to college. And I got business marketing, I had a great time. But I got a business marketing degree because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no clue, so I got a business degree. And it took me 7 years to get out of college because things happened. I had to go part-time, work full-time, blah, blah, blah. But if he didn't push me, I might have been part of the system and not known what I wanted to do with my life. I think children need, whether they're pregnant, whether they're not pregnant, they need a little
Direction.
push. They need
Right,
direction,
yes.
They need that because you don't know what to do with your
From a
life.
young age also.
Okay, let's talk about the community. What, is there something that we want to put that we haven't covered here? And we just want to finish this up because then we're going to talk about who we need to engage in each one of these things.
You know what I see when I do the nonprofits, I think there's so many more organizations that can be involved together as a group, work together. I find that in Laconia, it's not as often as you like it to be. They all want to do their own little quote things, but they don't want to network with an agency that's down the street doing the same thing, that's been doing it for 20 years. But they want to do their thing because, I don't know, they want to be pat on the back, whatever. But why not just combine as a group and work together? You get much better services, more for your buck, obviously, and you can help many more people.
Agency cooperation.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I see I've heard agencies, I feel like we cooperate really well together in this area. I never found that, maybe some, but I feel like I
Erica
do.
sees more.
Yes, I do.
To leverage
But I do enough that, well, how do you know that, Lynn?
Okay.
I think we should have more financial support. I think a lot of the nonprofits in the community are underfunded
That's true.
from the state and the local level. It seems like whenever we're in a time of crisis, what's the first thing that they try to cut is the services, the social programs. We went to, actually the last listens that I was there, one of our state reps was there, is state rep from Guilford, and she said it's the easiest thing for state legislatures to cut. It's the first thing that they cut.
But are we in a time now where we have to stop looking for help from the government and start looking in the community? Because we can't rely upon the government now. It's got to come from the community.
So talk a little bit about that. Where do we find that help in the community?
We have to band together. It takes a village to raise a child. We got to do it together. And somehow it's going to take a lot of effort of going out and knocking on doors and talking the talk and getting more people involved.
I would say that would happen though when people understand what is the culture of poverty. When, as Dennis is saying, you don't make those people over there the reason why. When we can say, and I think I've said this before publicly, when they can say it's not that they are in poverty, but we are in poverty.
I agree.
When the community can say we have a poverty problem, then there can be a difference. But that comes through educating the community. What does poverty look like? What does the culture of poverty mean? Is it just an economic piece? Is it also a social piece? How is the community going to get behind this? And this is, I think, the whole focus of this process. How is this community going to get behind so that we can actually make a difference and reduce poverty?
I think the frustrating thing is when I go into Vista with the program that we have for Got Lunch, and even the checkers say, I don't know why you want to do this, because I've seen people come through here with food stamps and they buy lobster. That's a perception.
Yeah.
I was at the fundraiser at Muskrat, and I'm trying to raise money for, and the gentleman sitting next to me, an elderly gentleman, said, oh, this is ridiculous. You don't know if that food's going to the kids. It's going to the adults. I said, well, I'm not the food police. I just want to provide it for the kids. So
how does
I
the
think it's the
community-
perception of what is poverty.
It's educating the community, again,
Exactly.
basically, yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
And
That's not as easy as it
that
says.
has now come full circle
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
to the idea of what perception is, what in reality is, and this is the start of the dialogue with the community. And this is, we got to the place where, how do we then spread this to other people? And so,
And that's
good
not
to
as
do that.
easy
You
as it
really
is.
did a good job.
It's hard.
Let's just go back to, does somebody have one more thing that we can put on?
For community.
Yeah.
I think that the community and all of the dynamics of the community, such as the developers and whatnot, when Alan came into our continuum repair meeting, he gave us this wonderful flow chart and sheet, and there were so many people on that all I can think of is, I've never heard of your program. I know Laconia School District. Then you've got some, citizens here. Awesome, rock on. I mean, I know Erica from Guilford Welfare, and then you've got a few more people, but it's like, how do we talk to each other? That's an issue.
Mhm.
That is a huge issue. You have so many committees in this county and Merrimack County, and we have a group, we meet every third Wednesday. you know, and our group kind of goes a little bit smaller, then it gets a little bigger, then it gets a little smaller. But how are we doing this collaboration of groups so that we're all on the same page?
And again, you know, just to take my facilitator's hat off, I mean, we are there. We are this financial stability partnership, which is actually the one that is convening this group. And part of it is to get everything that is happening around poverty, at least making everyone aware of what it is, so that every group doesn't have to do everything, but you know that another group is doing that. So, yes, it's something that people need to be aware of and to think of, and we have to work on it. Then we are working on it, I think.
Sounds like the leaders of all these groups need to get together and have meetings monthly or whenever so that they can.
We have that, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Change it to a different day, I'll be there.
No, it gets
I
bigger.
mean,
than
one of the things that I
us.
do an awful lot of networking. I think I've got my fingers in many of the different pies. No matter what we do as far as the collaboratives are concerned, there will always be ownership, there will also be mission, there will also be reasons why people will not participate with, it could be just time as well. But there are always going to be some reasons why all the collaboratives won't work together, and it's not because we're not working for the same end. We all are working, I think if it were going to be a fundamental piece, working to reduce poverty and empower people. There are just too many reasons why it's a great vision to have everybody together. Too many places have their own reasons why they have to do things their own way. And that has to be respected as well, if the organization is going to run well. So it's trying to curve the cats all in the same direction.
I was wondering, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
do all these organizations, do you go to banks and say, look, you know, we need some money for this? Because I'm always seeing banks in the newspaper.
We go to the banks and we ask and we say we
or-
would appreciate some support, and they say thank you very much. And
they don't reciprocate.
sometimes they like it, sometimes we have somebody from the bank who sits with somebody and that helps. But again,
I see an awful lot of
We're from New Hampshire.
$15,000 to so-and-so, the Humane Society, and
We're from New
They forget
Hampshire,
about
we're a bunch of
humans.
independent customers.
I'm
And
sorry?
we're going to keep our independence to a certain extent,
It's a lot
as
of grant
individuals,
writing, too.
as
Yeah,
groups.
yeah.
The other thing is landlords, landlords need to be involved too in our, we have a lot of housing that's, I've been living in some of the housing that we have in the, and yet the rents are skyrocketing because of all the foreclosures, so everybody foreclosed on their home, so now they're renting, so the landlord says, oh, good, let's ask twice as much for rent. Not thinking of who is living in those homes, they can't afford it, exactly. And, if you get something, and we do have some good landlords in town,
5 minutes.
Oh, we have so much.
Okay, let's go back,
I just want to say I love Liz's idea. I wish there was a way, because I am involved in like 5 or 6 collaboratives, and I think the more collaboratives, the better. But yet, obviously, somehow the 5 or 6 collaboratives I'm involved in haven't crossed your 5 or 6 collaboratives. There was a way to have like a mother of all collaboratives and have everybody that was a nonprofit that in any way worked with poverty or whatever, like all the agency directors, all come to one place at one time. Because I know me, I can go to 1 meeting a month easily to collaborate, but when there's like 10 meetings a month and we're underfunded as it is and we're trying to serve kids also, that's when it could get hard. So it would be beautiful if somebody could organize the big collaborative.
coalition, the Child and Family Coalition, that's what we have established ourselves as, is that place where
The
people-
mothership.
Well, that those organizations that are.
Do you go to
working
that,
with
Liz?
family-
Because I've been to that. Okay.
Never heard of it. Just
And
another
you
one,
go-
and I'm only one person, granted, I've got a lot of people in my
I got one,
organization.
like, long one out there if you want one more. I think you should maybe get rid of text messages, emails, Twitter,
I've already
cell phones, and maybe bring the community back together
My
and
sister
walk
says,
across the
"People
street and say
live in a
hi to your
bubble with all
neighbor.
this stuff."
I've already tweeted this with # poverty.
Say,
Okay, so
That might bring
just
the
for, in the
community
next
together.
5 minutes, let's look at employment, individual support, and community, and just talk about who needs to be involved when we're talking about employment? If we're thinking about these things, who needs to be involved?
Community college?
Chamber of Commerce?
School.
Businesses?
The employment office?
Belknap County Economic Development Council.
Yeah, okay.
EDC.
I'm going to put child care resource and referral, because we have that.
Educators?
School.
Schools, yeah.
Community colleges, if
That's a really good,
Probably nonprofits that work with people that need jobs, so we can network with employers.
I mean, the people that get the grants, like the WIA program, to help people get jobs.
How about the
Media?
newspapers?
How about the media, yeah, I was just gonna say that, newspapers and writing articles in the paper, I think that people look for these stuff like that, I mean, that's, get awareness going.
Okay, so let's look at this for individual support, who needs to be involved?
Schools.
healthcare organizations,
Churches.
yes, definitely churches.
Faith, you put it, please put faith community. No, faith's called churches.
Daycare also. Because you talk a lot to the people that we get directly to daycare and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
You know, without you saying, I need help, you know.
They know.
I think
Should daycare be
families,
up in employment?
I think all of it.
Child care
Yeah.
resource and
Oh,
referral.
that's what- I think families need to be more involved, instead of maybe just individual one-on-ones. I don't know if people bring the family in more.
I mean, that's where,
Together,
that's where,
together.
if we're looking for individual support, we're looking for individual support from the community. The community needs to be there.
That's cool.
You know, The historical piece in Laconia right now is that the Congregational Church is out of money to support people in the community. I've never seen that happen. So, I mean, you know, you're looking to go outside the government, you want local churches, as they keep preaching, well, the church's got to do it. Well, the churches can't do it when they don't have money. So,
How about, if we're looking at unhinging funding local officials?
Local welfares, because not everybody is.
that's actually going to be,
Erica.
that would actually need to be a systemic piece, because you're going to use food stamp monies for buying a car. It's going to be
I think
some
the local
issue.
welfare needs to change anyway, some of the things that they're doing are, I can't believe they're legal, to be honest with you. I mean,
And I've dealt with every single
how can one
welfare
town be
director.
different than the other town? They all need to be working together, and, you know, I think some of the rules have to change, especially with all the cuts we've had in programs.
$9 worth of what's that money, APTD?
Oh, yeah, no,
Oh.
Have you thought about?
How about law enforcement?
yes.
No.
I was gonna say, what about business owners? To really, I don't know if that should go into individual or the employment, but if you bring in business owners to really help these people establish a better network of who owns these businesses, maybe they see them in the community, the grocery store or something like that might lead to a different opportunity. Because
Have a
I think-
business forum.
I think they don't have any network, and it's tough to get into.
I think selectmen and councils like that in the towns.
Yeah,
Is that
and local officials and legislators. Okay, if we look at these as far as community change, what do you think?
I think
Who needs to be involved?
The local government. 5 years need to come off. Nonprofits. The faith community.
Also the housing sector too.
Hmm?
The housing sector. More affordable housing.
Our local citizens. If local citizens are going to still denigrate people who are are receiving assistance, then it's not going to change. It's still going to remain polarized.
I think law enforcement there also, only because kids look up to law enforcement, and it would give them
Media, we're going to continue to have half-truths.
Landlords, local landlords, what is it, the Lakes Region Landlord Association?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the state government too, because the state, I mean, the feds give the money to the state. You know, the state could then redistribute it to the communities instead of.
1/3, the lower third of the state, in respect to housing, gets 95% of the money.
Right, no, I think.
So we in Belknap, Merrimack counties, but Belknap gets zero. I mean, virtually zero.
One sector is missing from all this, and that's healthcare. You know, people are, what I mean is,
Most of the population is down.
Anyone else? How about getting people involved, educating? Anyone else we're missing that would work with that?
I mean, I know it's difficult to get parents into parent-teacher stuff, but maybe using that as a way to get the community together.
Some more programs for teens where they can actually be involved as a group instead of looking for trouble out there.
Well, I think we have a lot of programs.
There are.
We just
Okay,
need
yeah,
to
yeah,
find
no.
out before we, you know, because they're all going to disappear real soon. But I can give you the information.
All right. Good job. Right? You guys were great. Thank you all. And we're going to go back to the multi-purpose room and go over this. Unless if somebody wants to report, they can. If not, I will. Thanks.
Nice try, Karen.
I thought I would try, but
I'll be with that way real quickly.
Liz, where do you
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I do appreciate the fact that you took time out from your busy evenings to come out and join us. What we're going to be doing now for the next half hour or so is to do a report out from each of the groups on what you talked about and what the various findings were that you had. So what's going to happen is that each of the group leaders is going to get up and talk a little bit about what your findings were. And we're going to go through that with all of the groups. Once that is concluded, our evening will be concluded. I will have a couple of just very, very brief remarks at that point in time. But basically, for now, the group leaders are going to go up and they're going to present. And we will get you out of here without fail slightly before 7 p.m. So if you could, group one, if you're ready, I would appreciate it if you would come up and present.
Catching my breath and carrying us down thought, is the impact of poverty on property values. People knew that there certainly was an impact on property values, but they didn't know that we could quantify it and know that it takes over into longer-term problems for your community. The other thing, I'm really out of breath for me. The other thing that really surprised them was the impact of low wages on crime being higher than the impact of unemployment. And they kind of guessed about what that might be and thought about perhaps it would be because if you're working really, really hard and you're busting your butt and you can't pay your bills, that might be pretty frustrating, and maybe that's why people would feel more comfortable in crime versus when they're unemployed. So the issues that we spent the most time talking about as we got into the discussion were probably the biggest one was about living wage. And people were really, really struck about the big gap between what living wages and poverty wage. That was really important to the group to talk a lot about that. Some things that we could possibly do, we had an employer that was in the group and they said, you know, meet myself as an employer and I would like other employers be mindful about what are we paying people? Are we paying people enough so that they can pay their bills? Or am I, as an employer, contributing to the problem? There was also the idea of there are some communities around the country who have explored and actually become a living wage community, like that's their culture and standard in their community, that we're going to make sure all jobs are living wage. So they talked about whether we would want to explore that, look at some examples of other places, maybe, and to see if that's something the community would want to do. Another thing that they talked a lot about was, if you think about where we are tonight, we're in the school, right? And the school has been very generous to open the door for the community to come in. And they thought that that could be built on and expanded on a lot more to have mixed age, full day community schools, schools really being the center of the community, so that there'd be schooling available from 8 or 9 in the morning to even 8 or 9 at night. And even some mixed age, so you might have some adults that didn't finish their high school diploma, and they're going to come back and finish. Maybe some kids need to work in the morning, and they're going to take their class at night. So it was a pretty interesting idea, and it really felt basically that the whole community would need to be part of that conversation. RC, your school boards, and all of that, employers, everyone, because that's a huge decision. So. And then the next one they talked a lot about, but I think we landed more on a question than a statement per se. And the question was, when we look at our kids that are making tough decisions, that not tough decisions, but bad decisions, and we see that some of that might be because of low self-esteem, we see that gets passed down from generation to generation sometimes, right? And so we ask ourselves, well, how do we increase the self-esteem and self-regard of the parents to be able to pass that on to the kids? And we really couldn't answer that. We got kind of stuck because we said, well, if the parents can't be self-reliant, if they don't have a job where they can pay the bills and hold their head up, is it possible for us to help those parents have self-esteem to be able to pass on to their kids? So we don't know the answer to that, but we really wondered about it a lot. We wanted to make sure that we mentioned that. And then mental health came up. It was a big topic in our group, and basically landed on the idea that we need a holistic approach of approaching mental illness in our community. And then we were delighted to have somebody from the group remind us that we had one last thing that we hadn't talked about in our busy evening, and that was our strengths in our community. So people said some big strengths for the community are our communication, doing things like this, and the group felt very strongly that they wanted to have more conversations like this. They wanted to know when the next one was. And they also felt that people in this community had a lot of passion for the community, that they really cared deeply about it, and they had a commitment to making it a better place. And so those were the strengths that this community has that we can build on working together on part. And I don't know if I missed anything from my group, but I'll move this out of the way.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Group 2.
Group 2 made a group decision that individual people would do part of the presentations. So we will have 3 different people who will be getting up to speak on the 3 different issues that they felt were the most important. I'm sorry. Well, take it away. Take it away, Chris.
My name is Chris Adams. For those of you who do not know me, I'm the Chief of Police here in Laconia. We're going to focus on the one thing that we could, if we could wish anything to change, poverty in our community. So what I chose to talk about, obviously, was substance abuse and the issue of substance abuse in our community. When I was sworn in as chief, I said that that was one of my big issues and concerns in this community. Laconia is not unique by any means. Other towns, communities, and the state and nation are seeing a drug epidemic that hasn't been seen for a long time. especially with prescription drugs. I venture to guess that there's a correlation between substance abuse, drug use, and the poverty rate, and of course, the crime rate. And we have seen that here in Laconia. I just need to find my substance abuse. For ways to attack this issue, in my opinion, I've always said it's not a police issue. The police going out and making arrest after arrest after arrest is not going to work. I think that's been proven through the war against drugs. It's going to take a community effort to come together as a community and get everybody involved to solve this problem. So the way we look at it, and our group spoke about this, is education and awareness campaign on the issue, making sure people understand this is happening. The Laconia has seen 8 overdose deaths in 1 year. To make sure people know that, and then also then to say, we're not going to tolerate that. So education awareness programs through the police department and through our community partners. Treatment programs, of course, we're seeing a lot of funding, state funding being decreased for treatment programs, and we're seeing the results of that, and the community is as well. But how do we get the treatment to those who need it the most? Big challenge. Enforcement. It's not the solution, but it is an important part. And if we send the message out to the dealers that are coming from Lawrence or Lowell or from New York City that are coming to our community, renting out a hotel room for 2 days, making $20,000, returning, and then coming back, then if they know that if they come to our community, they're going to be arrested and it's not going to be tolerated, I think that sends a very powerful message. So enforcement is a part of that as well. And changing the community norms, the community culture. When we have 8 people die, residents, we have 4 people die last year, 2 young mothers, and their little children are the ones that find them dead, this community should be outraged. And we should not tolerate that. And we haven't seen that, but I think in the last year, year and a half, people are beginning to say, we're not going to accept that in our community. For these kids to grow up without a mother or a father, or the violence that this brings. So changing our community norms in Laconia and saying it's not going to happen here anymore. And if you're going to do that, we're going to deal with it. You'll be arrested. We have support from the city council, which has been fantastic on this topic, and all of the other stakeholders here. So that's a big part of it. You know, our community partners, the police, the schools do a fantastic job, as you know, dealing with this, working with other communities. The hospital, standing for a drug-free Laconia. Claire, my dear friend over here, is part of that. Standing for a drug-free Laconia is a grassroots coalition that was started here because residents were sick of hearing and reading the headlines of drug abuse deaths and drug abuse and crime associated with it. So it's a grassroots group that has come together to address this and meets on a regular basis.
Our next meeting is, the next meeting will be the last Thursday in August, and 4 to 6, we're right now getting better together, and we would love to have more people in the community who ask the word and join it. Where? August 30th. August 30th is August 30th.
Some roadblocks, obviously, is funding for all of these treatment programs for departments, the police department or other departments. Money is always an issue. We shouldn't let that be the reason why we don't do something. Budgets, community norms, we already spoke about, that is, you know, I'm not speaking specifically to Laconia, but the surrounding communities in Belknap County, just because they're 4,000 population or smaller Laconia, does not mean that this isn't happening in those communities. Because it's happening everywhere. And drugs and criminals, they don't see the boundaries of towns. They don't allow that to stop them. So it is in all of the communities in Belknap County. The availability of drugs, they're readily accessible through various sources to our kids, to the adults in our community. So that's a huge challenge that we see. It's going to take a group effort to address this problem. I think there is a correlation between substance abuse and poverty, and that's why I chose this topic and we chose to speak about it. Any questions or anything?
Hey, one of the other pieces looked at in group 2 was right away when we were looking at the statistics, we could see there were a very large number of very low wage jobs. That's one of the contributing factors, people being in poverty. So we were looking at both the education and the economic development. On the economic development side, we started to talk about things that need to happen in the community. We know the Economic Development Council, the Chamber of Commerce are working on things, but there's other things we can do, and we need to all partner together to help make some of these things happen. Accessibility to the regions issue, that the roads need some work. Expansion of broadband. When was the last time you got on the internet? You didn't get kicked off 5 seconds after you got on. We need to get higher speed broadband. We need to market the community more. It's a place that employers are going to want to come to. We've got a lot of good features here. There's lots of buildings that can be redeveloped and used. Workforce. We're going to talk more in a minute about education, but Laconia, if you turn back the clock a few years, had lots of people that knew how to work in factory-type jobs and had a strong work ethic. We're only a half a generation away from that. We can get it back in this whole region, but we've got to really work at it. In order to have employers want to come here, you've got to be able to say to the employers, there's a good education system, there's good housing stock, there's good infrastructure, and good health care. We've got a lot of those, but we've got to work on getting involved, work better. We've got to market these kinds of economic development ideas to both existing and new businesses and help both kinds grow. In order to make this happen, we're going to need to find some venture capital. We believe that there's some in the area because some people in the area will invest in things in other parts of the country. We've got to get them to start to invest in things here. We need to get more people involved from the local infrastructure, from the banks and the other economic institutions to want to work with developing some of the social capital and venture capital. We need to work on the full range of all different kinds of jobs, so there's a full stratum. And we need new people to come in that bring in those new ideas. And the point was made that sometimes it's the new immigrants that are coming in that actually bring some of those new ideas. The whole country is really built on having a constantly changing, vibrant population. So there are a lot of challenges and roadblocks, but we highlighted a couple. One was that there are a lot of different places you have to go if you're trying to develop a new business. And we need to find ways to make it easier for people who want to develop a new business to make it one-stop shopping. So when they have their questions, they can go one place and have a lot of those answered. We also noted that there's a considerable amount of economic and lack of understanding about how you go about trying to start something new. And we need to develop more economic literacy, both in terms of starting a new business and also with a lot of the people who are in poverty, just to manage the money they've already got. So covered a lot of ground.
And I'm just going to quickly talk about education from group 2. We talked about education as affecting poverty within our community, but not just education as a whole, education that can create opportunity. So we looked at one major issue was the idea of the standards within our community. What is a quality education? What is a sufficient education? And do we have any kind of agreement on what that is? Is there parts of our community that think that just getting by, just making it through high school is success versus having high expectations and high standards? And I know our new high school principal has talked a lot about his goal is having very high standards and teaching our children to reach those standards. And that's something that as a community we need to improve on those expectations, and we need to improve on our expectation of parental involvement. It shouldn't be a surprise for a parent to be involved. It should be part of your child's education. We found communication to be key, because as we started having conversations, we had group members asking about certain things and other members saying, well, that's actually happening, but the left and the right hand don't necessarily know what the other is doing. So having communication about the education in the community and how that affects the businesses. So we looked at some of the trade programs and internship programs that are going on at Laconia High School right now and how fabulous those are, but how much more communication needs to be about them and how greater they can grow, as well as the mentoring program that was started here at the middle school this year. An outstanding program, but it can only get bigger, it can only help more students. So an idea to kind of address the gap between the education and the workforce is to create a task force where businesses and education can come together, and the educational people in the community can say, what do you need? What do you need your workforce to be able to do? Well, what do we need to do to bring in more development to our community? And so bringing together the high schools, the local colleges, the adult ed program, and the businesses, and really having conversations and keep that ongoing. Again, communication being the key. And the last thing we talked about, and again, it's, I guess, maybe more of a question, we didn't necessarily get an answer to this, is how to continue to engage families who are facing barriers. When we talk about teaching a 10-year-old child, well, it's really hard to instill hope in a 10-year-old whose parents don't know how to read, who don't have any, feel they have success on their own. And I know as a community member that if I know someone needs to learn how to read, I can try to send them to Peggy Selly at Adult Ed, and she'll take them in with open arms. But that's not happening for everyone in our community. How do we still have adults who don't have the education that they need? And we need to improve that in order to help our families through and through. So that's kind of what we talk about in terms of education. And I think that's all for group 2.
Yeah, group 3 come up, and I'm just being mindful of the time mark. We have 32 seconds. 5 minutes.
Okay. We never got around to talking about strengths, but the group really exemplified the strengths of this community. We had representatives of the faith community and also people who were working in education, in health services, in housing, all of them not only deeply committed to improving the community and improving the situation of people living in poverty, but also very knowledgeable about what the work really entailed to do that. We covered a number of areas. We started off talking about the importance of helping job seekers who are often, particularly in this economy, up against stiff competition and sometimes not really prepared in terms of how to interview, how to present themselves in a resume, how to dress, how to conduct themselves, how to put the best foot forward. There are a number of services that are offered through the Employment Security, the Salvation Army, community colleges to help people. There are other services to provide appropriate clothing, etc., for people who are going on job interviews. But there's no real central location for all of these services or way to communicate what's available to people who are looking for that critical position. So we feel that needs to be brought together a little bit more coherently. We talked a lot about education, as did Group 2, but from a different perspective. We talked about the need to develop leadership skills, resiliency, and self-esteem in all of our students, K through 12, but focusing particularly on the early years, where issues of critical esteem can be, issues of self-esteem can be so critical for a student's future development. And the importance of infusing this through the curriculum, so that you're dealing with issues like bullying, for example, not as a separate thing and as a good citizen kind of lesson, but as something that is infused throughout the whole curriculum. Resilience is really the key to academic success for students living in poverty. And so many of them have so little resilience that it's very, very easy to have their dreams deferred forever. We talked about the issue of communication and collaboration as another major issue. We've, I think, made some great strides in the last couple of years, particularly in communication between service providers, and Better Together is an enormous effort and bearing great fruit. But we need to communicate better also with the faith community, because often there are services that the people who are being counseled through the faith community need, and they may not be aware of those things. This is going to be an ongoing effort, I think. We've made great strides, but there's still a great deal to do.
we also need to do a great deal more in terms of community attitudes toward poverty. We need to do some things, but I think in two different directions. One is to put a human face on poverty, to make people understand that this isn't just a problem. These are real people. These are their friends, their neighbors, their associates who are often suffering, and we need to make them understand the stories that are behind some of the negative headlines that they see in the paper. And we also need to make people understand the ramifications of poverty. I think the information that we had today did a good job of laying that out at a basic level. But the ramifications which affect everybody in the community. Poverty cannot be allowed to exist in certain areas of the community with the assumption that it's only those areas that are being affected. Everybody is affected. It's not just through crime, property values, the economy, but our whole standard of living is affected by poverty that is not ours necessarily, but is still our communities. And throughout the discussion, we talked a lot about, something that's easy to ignore when we're talking about some of these larger problems that we have to address, which is the safety net, which in itself is not what it was a few years ago. And we need to still deal with those daily problems that people are facing, transportation, food, basic shelter, and make sure that those things are addressed as well. And I think those are the major ideas. If I missed anything, anybody in the group who wants to point out any? Got it? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. We had, I'm just going to focus on the 5, we had like a list of 14 different ideas that we came up with, and then I tried to condense it down, and I ended up with 5 like broad categories of activities. So, and they came up with a great list of people that are already working on stuff or could be working on stuff. So great job, Group 4. The first area was doing some kind of public education campaign. We thought we'd call it like the Poverty Academy or something like that to raise awareness of the issue in the community and what the resources are for people living in poverty, to empower citizens to help people or refer people to services when they encounter somebody who may be struggling in their daily living. The second idea was somehow trying to figure out a way to require people to go through some services that could help them, like whether it's financial literacy or counseling if they have mental health issues, if they need parenting education, help with health and wellness choices, things like that, kind of providing a suite of services in connection to receiving public assistance. We didn't really know how we could go about doing that, but we had a lot of folks expressing that desire to see people doing some volunteer work in exchange for getting the service and putting in the time and effort to learn some skills that they might need to help them be successful. So that was a big topic of conversation. The third one is providing more safe places for kids to be cared for both day and night, recognizing that some people have to work at night and it's very difficult for them to find childcare. And if they don't belong to a church or have family, sometimes that can actually be a barrier for them getting to work. The fourth one had to do with economic development, and a lot of the discussion was focused specifically on the city of Laconia, but one big topic was how can we change the mindsets of property owners in both downtown, the Weirs, and Lakeport, help them understand why investing in properties, improving the appearance of the city can help our local economy so that we have better job opportunities, more job opportunities for people, want to make people invest who may be looking for an investment opportunity to put their money into our community, because people were expressing the fact that a lot of times you drive through certain areas and you don't want to put your money there. It just doesn't look like a place that you'd want to invest. So we want to change that perception by improving the appearance. And that also included supporting city leaders in trying to make changes that make Laconia more business friendly. So it talked a lot about
planning board approvals and streamlining stuff like that. And people were very supportive of that idea. And then the fifth area had to do with job creation, but specifically creating jobs that support, train, and increase confidence and self-esteem in people. We heard some interesting stuff from Lakes Region Community Services about some businesses they've actually created for that specific purpose. And we talked a lot about how other groups, like churches, if you have a food pantry, anybody who's working in the food pantry could be training someone else how to operate the cash register and do inventory and things like that. So those were our 5 ideas, and want to thank everybody in my group. Did a great job.
Our group number 5. We're going to speak for group number 5. And I'm going to be really quick because I know it's getting to the end of the night. Our biggest aha moment was that we didn't realize the actual poverty figure was so low in Belknap County. So I thought that was pretty important to share. And then we kind of looked at what was one thing that the community can do to change or reduce poverty. And we started identifying things that we really need good paying jobs. That's key to reducing poverty. We need greater access to higher education. We need to address transportation issues. You can't get to where you need to go, particularly jobs, if you don't have a way to get there. Mentoring programs for children and families. There was a whole slew of reasons why mentoring and the topics around mentoring would affect poverty. Part of it is having those secure relationships, but sometimes families and adults need mentoring around financial literacy, about parenting skills, about, just coping with the stressors of life. We had also the systematic reduction or overhaul of the public benefit system. And we also identified needs to ensure education is adequate and that we're really preparing students for the world of work and being a citizen in our local community. And then on the individual level, we identified you need to get involved with elections if you really want to make a difference. You need to vote. You need to offer to mentor. You can buy local and American-made products. You can show others how to develop the skills you have. One suggestion was really using YouTube as a way to share your skills and abilities so you can teach somebody else how to do them and offer them as well. And get involved with organizations like the Belknap County Economic Development Corporation and schools. Then we kind of drilled down into, all right, specifically what could employers do? And some of the things identified were offering things like on-site daycare would help families tremendously. Flex time, health insurance, offering continuing education, internships for students to learn about jobs in their own community, school programs, and what they meant was employers could help support summer school programs that really helped introduce not only the concept of jobs in the community, but also that continuity of structure and a place to go in the summer. Virtual employees is a whole new area of employment, and volunteer programs that allow their employees to offer mentoring to their schools and local organizations. And then we really started looking at if you could do something to make changes, looking at from our social service perspective, we need to look at coordinating and cooperating with each other so that there isn't this tremendous overlap. Because sometimes you can find 5 organizations doing the same thing, but there's one thing that nobody's addressing. So how do you get to identifying the gaps? We need to look for providing places for people to go, to look for work and connect with the community, particularly if you're somebody who might be homeless. Where can you go to actually spend time looking for work, making calls around employment, connecting with your community, learning about who's who in your community. We also need to simplify what a lot of the social service programs do, the organizations. Even though 211 addresses one way as a directory, but there's still a lot of misinformation about who's doing what in their community, and how do you figure that out when there's like a whole slew of people to talk to. And then there was also a need that social service providers need additional training to identify the potential of people to leverage the assistance that is available and move out of poverty. Now, some of the barriers that we identified in our community was
that rules and regulations are complicated, and that's part of what makes reducing poverty so difficult. We looked at some of the current approaches only address the symptoms. They don't really get to the root of the problem. And we looked at some of the barriers as decriminalizing the use of marijuana. And what was around that issue was if people are offending using marijuana, it creates this whole, I guess, series of events that happens that complicates an individual's life, including now having a record, including, how do you pay for fines, how do you get past the stigma, and those are all things that complicate being able to access employment. We also looked at redistribution of wealth, high business tax, lack of dental services, energy and housing costs, the limited supply of affordable housing, no income tax, and lack of quality childcare and the cost of childcare, transportation, and the need for affordable health care. And those were all barriers that people identified in the community to reducing poverty. But then we ended with the strengths, and really what people felt very strongly about, that we're a community of caring, and by evidence of things tonight, we are an engaged group, and people seem to feel that that is something that we can always rely on. People also identify that when people do reach out for assistance, that there is comprehensive support available when you can get tapped into the right place. We also looked at the strengths of our community from the environment and what it offers us, that there's so many tremendous natural resources, and that not only does it provide a positive state of mind, but it's a beautiful place to live, and we think that's an opportunity. And strengths, there is no income tax, no sales tax, and relying on property taxes maintains local control. So that's group 5, and maybe if there's any others in our group who have more to add. That's it.
Group 6.
Last but not least. Group 6 talked a lot about what the other groups talked about, so I'm not going to repeat them. We categorized them as 3 topics: employment, individual support, and community. And we looked under each one of those issues and put together a list of possible strategies to address them. And so we looked under employment, the need for increased community awareness of available careers, the need to strengthen the business environment in the community, improved transportation. It would be important for people to be able to access available jobs. Mentoring of students by businesses to be able to have some kind of internships. Job sharing explores ways to attract business into our community, and to look at child care, both traditional and non-traditional hours, and to improve the availability of those. When we looked at, and under that, we also looked at, so who would be engaged in this discussion of exploring these strategies, and discuss the community college, the Chamber of Commerce, businesses, schools, the Economic Development Council, Child Care Resources Referral Program, nonprofits, and the media would be involved in that discussion. When we looked at the need for individual supports for families and individuals living in poverty, we looked at the need for the ability to respond to individual needs, that there's a need for discretionary funds out there that folks could look at, called community fund or whatever, for that one thing that they need to help to turn their life around, whether it's to fix their car so they can get to their job, and no funding available for that, then how do they even have a chance to move forward? So the ability to respond to individual needs, job preparation skills, the unhinging of funding, so it's not categorical funding, but rather regarding looking at the need and then finding the funds to do that. Financial literacy for families and also financial literacy and education within the schools so that children start to understand the need for bank accounts, for budgeting, for those types of things. Target the groups that are more likely to be poor. When we looked at the PowerPoint, there were 5 groups that are more likely to be poor. And so we need to look at the needs of those specifically and see what we're doing for each one of those groups. Promote hope and confidence and provide someone who believes in them. That's kind of the squishy part of it, but it's also been talked about in a number of the other groups that is imperative if we're going to help folks that are living in poverty. So who should be involved? Nonprofits, schools, healthcare, the faith community, child care providers, families, local officials, legislators, local welfare, law enforcement, business owners, all can be involved in the discussion of that. And looking at the community as a whole, as far as we're all involved in poverty, to look at community cooperation to leverage funds so that agencies are not looking at just their own funding, but how can we combine in order to provide the supports that families need. Increase local and state funding to nonprofits, get people involved, educate community on poverty and in order to motivate change. Collaboration of the groups within the community and to not forget to involve influence in looking at this. So the groups that need to be involved in looking at the community, those programs that are involved with those target populations, local officials, nonprofits, faith community, housing, local citizens, law enforcement, media, landlords, state legislators, and schools.
I promised you all I would get you out of here by 7, and I'm going to keep that promise. Those of you who are at meetings at which I chair, you know that I consider myself to be a failure if I go a minute late. So just briefly, one of the basic tenets of the Financial Stability Partnership is that we're not going to get where we're going doing things the way that we've always done it. And that's one of our basic principles. Looking at it, the only way that we're going to address an issue like poverty is to get the community involved, to get everybody working on the issue. It's not government's issue. It's not the social services issue. It is all of our issue. And we all need to figure out ways that we can work together to address that issue. And what we tried to do tonight was to get everybody together so that we could think about some of those ways. Many of the things that we've talked about in the group presentations are things that we've talked about already, are things where there are programs that are already ongoing. Some of the things that came out tonight are things I haven't heard about, and many of us haven't, and maybe there are some good new ideas that came out tonight. What's going to happen over the next couple of months is that we're going to take those ideas that you've all come up with and you've spent time tonight putting together, and we're going to look closely at them and say, are these things being done now? If so, who is working on it? And we're going to get that information out to those people who are working on those issues. Are there issues that aren't being addressed now, but there are groups out there that are working on similar issues, and they can be tasked with addressing the issues that we've addressed here? We're going to try to get those people involved in working on that issue. Are there things that we hadn't even thought about? Probably. Those sorts of things we're really going to need to sit down and look at and say, how do we effectively address those issues that have been raised? And that may be forming new groups, it may be getting better together involved, but regardless of how we address it, we are going to need people who are willing to work on these things. And all of you, by coming tonight, have obviously shown some willingness to at least come out and give some of your time. I applaud you all for that. A couple of quick things. We do have the evaluation forms. At the end of the evaluation form,
is an ask. We're asking you to say, are you willing to work on this issue to some extent? If you are, please give us please write your name down. We have most of your other contact information, and we will get in touch with you. If there's a specific issue that you're passionate about, if it's mentoring, if it's substance abuse, if it's working with seniors who are in poverty, write that down, and we will make sure that you're on the list when we're getting things put together to address those particular issues. The other thing that I hope that you have come out of this with is that the facilitated discussion process allows everybody to have a voice. This isn't a cloak and dagger thing where we've got a preconceived agenda. This was listening to all of you and coming up with some solutions to a problem that faces all of us. So I hope that you'll come out of this session with a better understanding of how the process works and what it's all about. And I'm sure that I'm missing something. Jack, is there anything that I did miss in the close?
That was one of the best closings I've ever heard.
7 o'clock. Good night, everybody.